A couple of days ago, I recorded a video that was meant for my Facebook, and it became so long that the file was too big for Facebook. And I tried all sorts of options, but seeing I used to have a Android and the rest of my equipment is Apple, I was having trouble transferring the file. And I know there are ways, but I had a feeling that I should just upload it to YouTube. And I wasn't expecting that I all of a sudden felt like making another video for YouTube, but here I am. So perhaps that is something that's happening now. There's always been a little desire to make videos for YouTube. I do have a couple of older ones. I love the travel vlogs, travel vloggers on YouTube, and I wanted to do the same. So I did make a couple of videos, and they're such fun memories to have, and I'm glad I made those, but that is definitely not what I'm passionate about. I love traveling, but having to record a bunch of clips throughout the day and then edit that video and find a soundtrack and that is just not my thing. I'd much rather just sit down, talk, and share that. So here I am, doing exactly that. And this video is actually a request from a good friend and sister that wanted me to share a little bit about why I left a movement most commonly called the Hebrew Roots movement. Some refer it to a messianic movement. I think that is a little misleading. So I'm going to stick to Hebrew roots, and I do believe that most people who are familiar with this movement knows it by that name. If you are not familiar, I think to avoid this video becoming too long, it would be helpful if you looked it up yourself, if you are curious. But the question was to make a video talking about why I left the Hebrew roots movement and instead started the journey in Judaism. To give a short background of me and my life, I have been a searcher ever since I was a little girl. I remember having that question, perhaps asking it out loud, I'm not sure, but I believe it was only in my head. What is the purpose of life? Perhaps I didn't ask it that way, but that was the essence of my wondering. Why am I here? What am I here for? What is the purpose? And that has been a question that has always been in my heart. And I've been through a lot of paths because I am searching, because I want to know that there is a purpose to this life, and I want to know what that purpose is and what the meaning is. So I've been through a lot of different realms. I think it is helpful to share that. I have been through a movement that at that time, and I think still is, referred to as the New Age movement, which I think is a hilarious name. And it's not very specific. So, to be specific, within that movement, I was very much into the crystal healing chakra realm, as well as aliens, and wondering perhaps if I was an alien from another planet or universe or what have you, which I no longer believe, but it is okay if you do, but I do not. Those sort of things, making tinctures with herbs and crystals, and that was kind of the things that I was drawn to. And I went on some trips that was connected to some of these realms and balancing your chakras, which was just a never-ending cycle. Perhaps I misunderstood it. I don't know. It's not really something I feel resonance with today. I do believe that we have energy centers within our system, I think is the best word, but I'm not sure if chakra covers it for me. I'm giving that background because it kind of explains the whole cycle that I've been through. Because as years passed by, I eventually, it's the type of one video on YouTube led to another. And having grown up with no religion or no spiritual practices, nothing at all really, over those years I was introduced to Jesus and Mary and these concepts that to me were so foreign. And I call them concepts because I don't, I think we'll get to that. But I started to get more comfortable with this Jesus guy that once was something I had no interest in exploring. And eventually I had a moment where, and I still believe this moment was very real, where I had an encounter with something in the spirit realm that I recognized as this Jesus. And being Norwegian, the only thing I know about Jesus is that he's a Christian guy. So I thought, of course. And so where else would I go to learn about this guy than in a Christian church? I had a very healing encounter that, like I said, was very real, and I still consider the starting point of my path, getting to know the creator of the universe. So my prayer to this creator was, plant me in a church so I can learn. And so he did. And I met beautiful people, and I learned a lot and I grew a lot. I'm grateful for that time in my life, but that time was very short because I rapidly started seeing things that did not make sense. When I read the Bible I had in front of me and saw the things done in the church, I thought to myself, this is making absolutely no sense. And I know that for some of my Christian friends that maybe watch this video, I'm not sure if they will, but if they do, perhaps they're going to be a little upset or disappointed that I say these things, but I have to be in integrity with myself and the things that I have learned in my own journey and studies. And so, as upsetting as it potentially could be for some, I have to be honest in sharing my story and my findings. And though there are many beautiful things in Christianity, and I know many beautiful Christians, and I respect a lot of the teachers that I listened to during that time, I do find it to be full of errors and not really helping you in getting to know God to the extent that is actually available for us. And so the Hebrew Roots movement showed up. think it started with one woman that was discovering things as well, slightly above, ahead of me, should say, sharing about the Sabbath, how Christians have turned that into Sunday, and the Sabbath is actually Saturday, and all these things that were foundational in the faith of this Jesus guy. And so that movement drew me in because it did talk about the things that I had discovered, and to me seemed to be more aligned with the Bible I was also reading. And I guess that's where I spent most of my time up until I left that movement as well. The Hebrew roots movement to me is Christian. I didn't see it at the time, but I do see it now. I do consider it a Christian movement. It is sprinkled with some Judaism, but it is not Judaism. In fact, I found that most people in that movement were very harsh towards Judaism and the Jewish people. And I didn't really understand this because Jesus, who I learned is actually named Yeshua, which in English would be Joshua, if anything. He's Jewish. So where is the disconnect? But he was new. He brought something new. It was revolutionary. He changed things. Oh, the evil Pharisees, misleading people. That's kind of the story that was continually told, and for so long I felt something was off, but I couldn't really put my finger on what that was. I am grateful for that season in my life as well. I learned so much. It built the foundation that I was looking for in understanding better what I was reading. But still something was off. Learning about the feast days that are in Judaism as well. So beautiful. Brought me closer to the Creator, to God, to the Great Spirit, the one who created me and everything around me. I felt a closeness that I was hungry for, that I really didn't feel much in Christianity except for glimpses, moments here and there. Certain books and concepts in Judaism were demonized, almost like if you even touch that, there is a darkness now in your life. That's kind of the feel of how it was presented. And it made me scared. I sincerely felt a type of fear around these books. I remember I had a friend during my year living in Israel, Jewish, searching, but Jewish, and he had one of these books, and I remember I totally freaked out. Oh no, this man is lost. This book. I share that now because I'm no longer embarrassed. I think it's a hilarious story, but that's really that's really the mentality that so many of people in the Hebrew roots movement have. This is scary, this is scary, this is off limits. No, you cannot do this. You cannot ask this question. You cannot venture into this realm. You cannot. And it's just so opposite of the essence of our Creator. He does not operate from a place of scare tactics and fear. So, what is this? it's so bizarre to me. And I just, like I shared in my previous video, I'm kind of glad that I have a little bit of this wild soul that just, you can't tame me like that. I'm gonna do what I want. But it's actually not really what I want. It's not in a rebellious spirit. It's allowing God to lead me and show me, and trusting that if I even venture into a realm that is a little out of alignment, He will bring me back into alignment. Is He not the Almighty, the All Powerful? There is so little trust, so much fear. And some of these books that were demonized, I started either reading myself or asking Orthodox Jews to explain and clarify these things that were said. And very quickly, I realized that they were all he said, she said, and cherry picking and then creating a whole story around this one thing that they cherry picked. And they all turned out to be incorrect and false. And so I had to start questioning this movement that I was within. And that questioning led to wanting to have nothing to do with it. Respectfully, I am still very grateful for that time in my life. And there are so many beautiful people in that movement, people who are still my friends. But we don't see eye to eye most of the time. It's very rigid. You're not allowed outside a certain confinement that they have deemed the correct boundary line, whereas I don't see this, again, when I read my own Bible. I understand that the Bible just seems so off-putting to a lot of people because of how it's been represented, predominantly by Christians. It's not very common to meet people who have an impression of the Bible based on the Jews. It's very often going to be the Christians. And then sometimes, especially in America, for example, the Hebrew roots movement have now become so big that they too have become someone that people might refer to as giving an impression of this book. But these are sacred texts written by human beings that had an inspiration from above. And then you can agree and disagree with certain things that are rooted in belief and faith, cannot be proven. That is okay. But to be inspired by God to write something or do something is not something that's non-existent today. It still exists. Great artists that perhaps didn't even know God, most definitely inspired by God, most definitely aligned with that source that has made them creative so that they can bring that out into the world. We can all be inspired by God to write, paint, express, create. These texts are sacred. They are full of history and stories and traditions and ceremonies and so much beauty. And also a lot of things that are difficult to understand and hard to wrap your mind around. But when I read these texts, I just could not make sense of what I saw in the Hebrew roots movement. And so I started to dip my toes into the world of Judaism because surely someone who has carried these texts during hundreds of years, at least. I actually don't know the exact time when this was written down and actually compiled It's not been something that's so important to me to know, but the wisdom, whether written down or not, has been there from the very beginning, slowly but surely revealed as us human beings have opened ourselves up to be worthy of having it revealed to us, showing that we are capable of holding this wisdom. Surely these people know how to interpret and understand these sacred texts. And so that's why I started dipping my toes in this world of Judaism. And it was also with the help of two young men who has a channel on YouTube. Once again, YouTube is such a great resource and has been a huge resource in my own life and these journeys and paths that I've ventured into. With their channel called Alternate Media, written as alter and alternate media, as a kind of play on words, where they bridge the gap between these incorrect understandings from the Christian slash Hebrew roots lens of these sacred texts and the interpretations and understandings that are within Judaism. And then one could ask the question, but who's to say what's right or what's wrong? Well, certain things are able to be discerned, studied, and then concluded. Of course, there are many things in this world that are belief, faith, but not all things. And these sacred texts are meant to be understood and studied, discerned, applied to your life. And the resonance that I felt when I started learning from the Jewish mindset, you could say, and the wisdom that has been passed down from generation to generation for much longer than Christianity and Hebrew roots and what else. I don't know what else we have out there that uses the Bible or parts of the Bible, but the resonance was finally there. And that is why I ultimately made the choice of officially saying goodbye to the Hebrew roots movement and fully embracing Judaism. Still with the man who made this world even accessible to me, Yeshua, Joshua, definitely not Jesus. But it's okay, you can say Jesus, but once you know someone's name, it's polite to correct what you once thought was the name into the right one. But I now understand him as this Jewish man who continued the revelation of the sacred texts to us, not bringing something new, but rather bringing it to completion. As complete as our understanding can be of these sacred texts and how to apply it to our lives. A Jewish sect, you could say, if that is helpful, but most definitely not something new. The Pharisees, his brothers, that he argued with because that's what you do with family. The Jewish people still do that with each other till this day. They are not against each other. They are striving together for the same intention, for the same purpose, for the same goal, to understand more of the sacred texts so we can get closer to the source of this wisdom, the Creator. a strict monotheist. God is one, only He is creator. Yeshua is incredibly special, but not God, the creator. Something that, once again, Judaism is aligned with. And then there are other things that are part of the reason I knew that this is where my soul feels at home in Judaism, is that I am allowed to venture into other realms and explore what life has. And even if that realm is not in alignment, I am not chastised as if I'm a child. I am allowed to go there because there is a deep trust that the all powerful, great intelligence, God, the Creator, is capable of showing me what's off and what's in alignment and bringing me back into that. And so my mystic soul that is wild and loves to explore what's earth based, as the classic Taurus that I am, I can explore things that once was demonized. And a lot of those things are present in Judaism, and something that Judaism embraces because the source is God. As I shared in the first video that I recently uploaded, I am passionate about plant medicine. I am passionate about the medicine that Earth provides us, that God created for us. And these things are demonized in the Christian worlds, Hebrew roots included. And I believe that too is from a place of fear, ignorance. I don't say that in a demeaning way. We are all ignorant of things in life. That is totally fine. Lacking information is what I'm trying to say. Lacking information and proper education on these topics can create fear, and then you demonize. This is what I saw too much in this movement, and I don't want any of that, because fear is not from where I want to operate, and it is not from where God operates. He is strict and He is clear because He is the great intelligence, the ultimate representation of the masculine. There's a little squirrel playing in the trees. He sets boundaries. He is like the perfect father who knows when to tell you no. And sometimes that can be a little triggering, especially for a woman perhaps that has not had that in her physical life. But He does not operate from a place of fear, and so neither do I in my own life. I'm not sure if there's much else to share about that topic, but that is kind of how my journey went from Christianity, well, before that too, in the quote unquote new age, then into Christianity, into Hebrew roots, and then finding home in Judaism, which is not confined in borders too tight. It is a big world full of life and beauty and nuances. There are boundaries, but they allow you to actually live life and explore things without you thinking, am I doomed to punishment? Such a strange thing to continually ingrain into people's minds. Punishment for exploring. Would we do that to our children? Would we not lovingly correct, set boundaries, and explain why? That is my experience with God. He is, after all, our Father. He has told us what brings life and what brings death, because it's the natural consequence of what you put into this world, reaping what you sow. You reap death if you sow death. But the choice is yours. If you feel any sort of consequence that you deem as punishment, it is simply a natural consequence to you doing something that is out of alignment. And it is there meant to bring you back into alignment. Because God wants us all in alignment with what is good and holy and righteous and sacred and beautiful. And this is so clear in Judaism. And I found not at all clear in the Hebrew roots movement. Judaism to me is grounded, practical, logical. A world that allows you to ask questions no matter how controversial they might be. And they always have an answer. Even if the answer is, I don't know, let's explore it. Although I will say I've not found someone who says I don't know. They are incredibly well-studied people. Because they allow themselves to ask questions. Even if controversial, and what some in religious worlds would deem taboo. So I think that kind of explains my own journey and why I left the Hebrew roots movement and found home in Judaism, where all of me gets to be present. I don't need to hide aspects of myself or deem them wrong because men said so based on their, I have to say it, faulty interpretations of the sacred texts found in the scripture, the Bible. There is a way of interpreting the scriptures in Judaism called pardes, each letter representing a level of understanding. The literal, little more in depth, and it continues till you get to the mystical understanding. And I think so often in the Hebrew roots it is stuck on the first two levels, literal and a little more in depth. But It's not going deeper. It's not bringing it higher. There are so many levels of interpretation that bring such richness and beauty into what is written. And I think another beautiful thing that drew me to Judaism is how much of psychology that is included in the interpretation of these texts, how important psychology and the understanding of our psyche is in Judaism is one of also the biggest things that drew me in, because there was such a lack of that in especially Christianity, but also in the Hebrew Roots movement. And as someone who's very passionate about psychology, understanding the psyche, it was very appealing to me how often interpretations of texts showed me an undertone of psychological concepts that I also read about when studying Carl Jung, which, funnily enough, has also been demonized by many in the Hebrew Roots movement and also the Christian movement, because he ventured into the occult, which occult simply means the hidden, so it could be anything. But he ventured into things and territories that most Christians and Hebrew rooters have so little information about, that once again they have a fear. They are scared. And so instead of sitting with that fear and asking why, and perhaps transmuting that fear into knowledge by reading and getting a better understanding, they simply project that outwards and demonize something. If I feel fear, it's because it's wrong. But that is not how it works. How can you know something is wrong until you learn about the thing? You cannot deem something wrong simply because you are feeling sensations of fear in your body. If that was the case, me sitting here talking to you and making videos would be wrong, because I've also felt fear around doing that. But that sensation is only a sensation. It is not the ultimate truth. It is just something to sit with and be curious about and take the steps necessary to transmute it into whatever is needed, whether it's courage or wisdom, knowledge, understanding, whatever is needed. So I think that is also a huge part of why Judaism was so appealing to me, as the resonance with my rabbi, my master, my brother Yeshua has always been there throughout this journey, and my resonance with the sacred texts of the Bible still remain till this day. I am grateful that these movements, although I'm grateful to have been in them for the time that I was, also had so much I'm trying to find the right words. Let's put it like this. I do really understand the people who left faith completely after being in this movement. It's very sad to say, but I do understand it. And that is why I am very grateful that I didn't allow people to push me away from something that I know I feel deep resonance with, because I do. The scriptures have and continue to change who I am. It is life. It continues to live. Every time I read something, and I've read it before, it brings a new level of understanding. I get to know myself better. There is a change happening when I read the letters, the words, the books within this compilement of sacred texts. It's alive. It really is. And it is a tool of understanding your own psyche, your own soul, your own heart, your creator, human beings around you, because of course as you get to know yourself better, you get to know other people as well, because we are as unique as each one of us is. We are the same. We are connected. We are one and the same. And so me getting to know myself better will automatically help me know and understand other people. And in that way we can relate, connect, have community, see each other, be one, work together. And that is what I see happening as I read the pages of the Bible. It is changing me from within. It's helping me understand myself. It is like a mirror that I can look into and see myself more clearly in. And so I am grateful that the people who represented it in a way that was often quite off-putting did not put me off from these texts and from the man who I will forever owe my life to, because he gave his for me to have new life and come into union with his creator and mine. Yeshua, if that wasn't clear to some. I do feel like I've covered what I feel was important to cover in this video, but I, of course, do not mind questions. I am happy to share more of details from my story if that is something any of you would like. But this is my journey, and who knows how it continues to evolve moving forward. But in the here and now, I am grounded into Jewish mysticism, very connected to the earth that God created and asked us to be good stewards of. And I, quite honestly, have never felt any better. And I think the little me, who is still very present inside of me, is quite satisfied with the answers to her question, although she keeps seeking still. But there is a feeling of purpose and meaning. I feel purposeful in this world, and that is ultimately what I wanted to feel and what I hope everyone gets to feel. So may it be so, and see you in the next one.